Claire Bennett wasn't looking for love, she was looking for rent money. But when a billionaire with ice blue eyes walked into her office and said, "Pretend to be my wife," her world flipped. It was supposed to be a lie. 6 weeks, no strings, no feelings. Then he whispered, "I love you," and everything changed. The rain tapped softly against the glass windows of Bennett Interiors, echoing the rhythmic chaos inside Claire's mind. Her office was a mess of fabric swatches, open sketch pads, and half-drunk coffee cups. She hadn't slept properly in 2 days, and her inbox was bursting at the seams. Being a creative genius was one thing. Surviving in Manhattan with a dream in a tight bank account was another. Claire Bennett was used to being overlooked. Clients took her ideas but rarely gave her credit. Big firms praised her concepts and then hired someone else. Her landlord had left a final notice on her door that morning, and still she showed up to work. Ponytail slightly messy, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but posture straight. Then came him. He entered like a storm in slow motion. The door chimed softly as Nathaniel Cross stepped inside, bringing with him an air of command and cool confidence. His tailored charcoal gray coat hugged broad shoulders, and his ocean-colored eyes scanned the room with razor-sharp precision. Claire looked up from her notes and blinked. Her heart skipped for reasons she didn't quite understand. She'd seen men in suits before, flashy clients, cold investors, but none like him. "Ms. Bennett?" His voice was smooth, deep, and frighteningly calm. "Yes," she replied, trying to mask her surprise with professionalism. He didn't sit. He simply stood across from her desk and placed a sleek black envelope on the table. "I'm here to make a proposal," he said. Claire raised an eyebrow. "For interior design?" He smirked faintly, as if amused. "Not exactly." Curiosity bloomed into confusion. She opened the envelope. Inside, a legal contract. Her name was typed in bold near the top. Her stomach twisted as she read the header. "Marital agreement. Non-legal union. Confidential arrangement." She looked up, stunned. "What is this?" Nathaniel met her gaze without flinching. "I need a wife." Claire laughed awkwardly. "You're joking." "I don't joke," he said flatly. "Not about business or family." She stood slowly. "I'm not a call girl or a performer." "I never suggested that," he said, his tone softening just slightly. "This is strictly a business arrangement. Nothing more. No physical contact, no romance, just appearances." Claire folded her arms, suspicious. "Why me?" Nathaniel hesitated, then finally walked to the window. His jaw clenched. "My grandfather is dying. He's old-fashioned, controlling. His last wish is to see me settled, with a wife he approves of, before handing over the company. He doesn't believe in leadership without love." She stared, still stunned. "You don't have anyone else?" "I don't do relationships, not since my parents' marriage fell apart. I don't trust love or people's intentions. I need someone smart, poised, and convincing." He turned to face her again. "I've seen your interviews. You're quick on your feet. You're graceful under pressure. You're not like the socialites in my world." Claire exhaled slowly. "So, you want me to pretend to be your loving wife? For 6 weeks?" He nodded. "There's compensation. More than fair. And I'll make sure your work is featured in Architectural Digest by the end of it." Her heart hammered in her chest. The words Architectural Digest echoed in her mind like a promise of everything she'd worked for. Recognition, credibility, a dream that had always felt too far away. But still, a fake marriage. "Why not hire an actress?" she asked, quieter now. He shrugged. "They act like they're in love. I need someone who can look like she's not faking it." There was a strange compliment buried inside the insult. Claire walked slowly to the contract. Her fingers traced the edge of the paper. "No touching," she repeated. "No touching," Nathaniel affirmed. "No falling in love?" His lips twitched, almost like a smile. "Especially that." She turned to him, her breath caught between fear and fascination. Everything inside her screamed run, but her instincts whispered, "What if?" "I need the night," she murmured. Nathaniel nodded once. "You have until tomorrow. Noon." Then without another word he turned and walked out. leaving only the scent of expensive cologne and a world-altering decision in his wake. That night, Claire didn't sleep. She sat on the floor of her apartment, the contract in her lap, surrounded by dreams that had always felt one step out of reach. Her bank balance stared back at her from her phone screen. $47.32. She thought about the landlord's threats, her broken fridge, her dream projects that never saw daylight. And then she thought about Nathaniel. Cold, guarded, but oddly vulnerable. No strings, no real marriage, just a role. She whispered into the darkness, "This is insane." But the next morning at 11:59 a.m., she walked into his office and placed the signed contract on his desk. Nathaniel looked up from his laptop, brows slightly raised. "You're in?" he asked. She nodded once, her pulse roaring in her ears. "Let's give your grandfather the show of a lifetime." His expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered, almost like relief or gratitude. "Welcome to the lie, Mrs. Cross." And just like that, Claire's life was no longer her own. It was a performance, a contract, a ticking clock wrapped in velvet and diamonds. But no one, not even Claire, could have guessed that behind that lie, real love was quietly waiting. From the outside, it looked like the perfect love story. Claire Bennett stood on the balcony of Nathaniel Cross's penthouse, the wind playing softly with her loose curls as the golden Manhattan skyline bathed the city in dusk. Central Park stretched below like a peaceful ocean of trees. A camera clicked from inside. Another perfect photo for the newlyweds' curated Instagram life. The ring on her finger sparkled like truth, but every diamond hid a lie. The move-in had been fast. 1 minute, Claire was living in her cramped apartment with flickering lights and a leaky faucet. The next, she was wrapped in luxury, a walk-in closet the size of her old bedroom, marble floors, and a bathtub that could fit her entire past. They had dinner together that first night. Not romantic, awkward. He sat at one end of a long dining table, she at the other. Silverware clinked. Silence echoed. Nathaniel wasn't cruel. He was polite, respectful, but guarded, like a fortress too tall to climb. They practiced their story every night, how they met, an art exhibit in Soho. Their first date, a candlelit rooftop dinner, fictional. Their engagement, Central Park after a snowfall, also fictional, though Claire secretly wished it had been real. They rehearsed how they touched, when to smile, how long to hold hands, when to glance lovingly for cameras. It was a performance, but a beautifully choreographed one. "Think of it like theater," Nathaniel had said, but it didn't feel like theater when he brushed her hand during dinner and lingered just a second too long. Or when he walked into the kitchen at midnight, shirt sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled, and made her chamomile tea without asking. She had never told him how she took it, but somehow he knew. No sugar, just a slice of lemon. "It helps you sleep," he said simply, then left the cup beside her and walked away. Each morning she woke up in the master bedroom they shared, but didn't really share. Nathaniel slept in the guest suite, always closing the door quietly at night. But sometimes in the silence before dawn, Claire would hear the soft sound of his footsteps pacing the hallway, like a man haunted by something he wouldn't say. They kept up the illusion for the world. Charity galas, brunch with his family, candid photos in Central Park with fingers gently laced. The media fell in love with them. "Power couple goals," the headline said. Nathaniel's mother, elegant and icy, watched Claire with eyes that said, "You don't belong." His younger sister Lily, however, was kinder. She pulled Claire aside after brunch one day. "I've never seen him smile like that," she whispered. "I don't know what you've done, but thank you." Claire didn't know how to respond. She wanted to say, "It's not real." But the truth caught in her throat, because maybe, just maybe, parts of it were. Nathaniel had a strange way of being present without pushing. He didn't ask about her past, but he listened when she shared pieces of it. He laughed quietly at her dry humor. He learned her favorite jazz record and played it softly in the evenings when he knew she was working late. One evening, Claire walked into the living room and froze. Nathaniel was there, sitting in front of the fireplace with her design portfolio spread across the coffee table. He looked up, caught. "I didn't mean to snoop," he said. "I was just curious. She crossed her arms, unsure whether to be flattered or defensive. Then he added softer, "You're really talented, Claire. The world should see it." Her heart stirred in ways she hadn't felt in years. Later that night, when she passed him on the way to the kitchen, she noticed the tired crease near his eyes. He looked human, not the polished millionaire from Forbes, but a man who carried loneliness like a secret weight. "Bad day?" she asked gently. He looked at her. "They're all the same, until lately." Claire blinked. "Lately?" Nathaniel didn't answer, but he held her gaze just long enough for her to feel it. They were strangers pretending to be lovers. But sometimes when their hands brushed, when their eyes lingered too long, the pretending became a little too real. She began to wait for his footsteps at night. He began to bring her coffee in the morning, exactly the way she liked it. They still slept in separate rooms. But once, in a moment of insomnia, Claire walked out to the balcony. Nathaniel was already there, watching the stars. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. "Too quiet." He handed her a blanket and stood beside her. Their shoulders touched. "Funny," he murmured, "for a fake marriage. This feels strangely comfortable." Claire smiled, biting her lip. "Maybe we're just really good at lying." But in that moment, neither of them believed it. As the days passed, the line between fake and real grew thinner. She caught him watching her once, from across the room, the way his eyes softened, like she was a memory he never wanted to forget. She didn't say anything, but that night, in the privacy of her pillow, she whispered, "Don't fall for him." And still, a traitorous part of her hoped he already had. The rain had started hours ago, not loud or stormy, but steady, like a quiet drum beat against the glass walls of Nathaniel's penthouse. New York glimmered outside in shades of gray and gold, the city wrapped in a rainy haze. The fireplace crackled gently. Candles lined the marble counters and cast dancing shadows on the floor. The world outside felt far away, small, forgotten. Inside, Claire sat cross-legged on the oversized sofa, her knees tucked beneath a cashmere throw, a cup of tea in her hand. Nathaniel sat nearby, legs stretched out, a glass of wine untouched beside him. He wasn't in a suit tonight, just a dark sweater, soft at the edges and gray lounge pants that made him look heartbreakingly human. She had just told him everything, not the polished, rehearsed story for interviews or brunches, but the real truth. About growing up in a tiny one-bedroom apartment with her mom, about eating dinner on the floor because they didn't have a kitchen table, about working 3 jobs to pay for design school, and crying in stairwells when clients took credit for her work. Her voice had trembled, but Nathaniel hadn't looked away once. He'd listened, really listened, and now the silence between them was thick with something unspoken, heavy, warm, and electric. Claire stared into the fireplace, trying to calm her heartbeat. "You know," she said softly, "I don't tell that story to many people." "I know," he said. His voice was low, almost reverent. When she turned her head, he was already looking at her. Not with sympathy, but with understanding. And something else. Something she wasn't ready to name. She looked away too fast. But then gently he reached out and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. The touch was feather light, but it sent a shiver down her spine. His hand didn't drop. It stayed there, just beside her cheek, his thumb brushing against her skin like it belonged there. Like she belonged there. Claire froze. Her breath caught. Nathaniel leaned closer. His voice was barely above a whisper, as if he was afraid the moment would break if he spoke too loud. "This wasn't supposed to happen." Her heart thundered in her chest. "What wasn't?" He didn't answer right away. Then, almost painfully honest, he said, "This. You. Me. The way I feel when you laugh. The way I catch myself thinking about your smile when you're not even in the room. The way you make this cold, empty place feel like home." She blinked. Her heart cracked open. "Nathaniel," she started, unsure what to say, unsure if this was still part of the lie or something dangerously real. And then he kissed her. It was soft, careful, a breath of a question against her lips. He paused there, letting her decide, letting her run, letting her stop it. But she didn't. Her hand rose, trembling, and found the side of his neck. And when she kissed him back, it was like the dam broke. The kiss deepened, slowly, hungrily. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't practiced. It was real. Their lips moved together like they were remembering something they hadn't lived yet. Like they had always been meant to find each other in this exact moment, on this rainy night, with candles flickering and hearts laid bare. He pulled her closer, wrapping an arm around her waist like he was afraid she'd vanish. She melted into him, hands sliding into his hair, breathing him in. When they broke apart, their foreheads touched, breaths shallow and shared in the quiet space between them. Claire opened her eyes first, dazed. Still pretending? Nathaniel shook his head slowly, his thumb brushing her cheek. Not anymore, he whispered. Claire searched his face, waiting for the catch, the smirk, the business-minded detachment. But there was none, just vulnerability and truth. Her eyes stung. I thought you didn't believe in love, she murmured. I don't, he said softly, but somehow, I think I just found it. They didn't speak much after that. Words were too clumsy, too loud. Instead, he cradled her in his arms while they watched the rain. Her head on his shoulder, his fingers tangled in hers, the kiss still lingering between them like a secret promise. They didn't move for a long time. The clock ticked. The city whispered. But inside that penthouse, two hearts stopped pretending. By morning, the world would still think they were acting. But Claire knew better. So did he. And that kiss, it wasn't the end of the lie. It was the beginning of the truth. Love bloomed like wild roses, unexpected, untamed, and defiant. But no rose grows without thorns. And for Nathaniel and Claire, the thorns came fast and sharp. They had only begun to understand what they truly meant to each other. Their evenings were no longer performances. Their touches were no longer rehearsed. The penthouse that once felt like a stage now felt like a sanctuary. But outside their glass tower, danger stirred. Edward Cross, Nathaniel's cousin, had watched the growing affection with cold suspicion. He had always believed Nathaniel didn't deserve the company. For years, Edward had played the patient game, smiling through family dinners, sipping expensive wine, shaking hands with false warmth. But in the shadows, he plotted. The day Nathaniel's grandfather had named Nathaniel heir, Edward had nearly broken his glass in rage. But he kept smiling, waiting, watching. And now, he had a crack. He hired a private investigator, one of the best in the city. Quiet, discreet, ruthless. It didn't take long to find it. A hidden file, a signed contract, the proof that Claire and Nathaniel's marriage had started as a lie. Edward smiled as he read the document. 6 weeks, no touching, compensation included, fake, perfect. It happened on a sunny afternoon, the kind that made everyone lower their guard. The Cross family had gathered for a charity garden party at the family estate, tables draped in white linen, violinists playing in the distance, laughter, wine, polite smiles. Claire wore a soft blue dress, her hair curled around her shoulders. Nathaniel hadn't stopped looking at her since they arrived, but the peace shattered when Edward stood up and tapped his glass for attention. I'd like to make a toast, he said, smiling like a snake. To love, to truth, to family. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. He knew that smile. Edward pulled a folded piece of paper from his blazer. To my dear cousin, he continued, and his charming wife, or should I say business partner. He turned to the crowd. Tell me, Claire, how much did the role of Mrs. Cross pay? Did the contract include kissing lessons too? Gasps erupted, murmurs. All eyes turned to Claire, her face drained of color. Nathaniel stepped forward like thunder rolling in. Stop, he said coldly. Edward's smile widened. Why? This is fun. Maybe I should read the entire contract aloud? Nathaniel took another step, his voice lower now. Dangerous. I don't care what you think. I don't care what anyone here thinks. Then turning to the crowd, his voice rose, powerful and clear. Yes, our marriage started with a contract, a lie. But somewhere in that lie, I found something real. I fell in love with her. Silence rippled through the guests. Claire's heart stopped. He said it. He said it. out loud, in front of everyone. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled. Not because of the crowd, but because of the look in Nathaniel's eyes, like she was the only truth in his world. But Edward wasn't finished. That night, he leaked the contract to the press. The next morning, chaos erupted. Headlines: Billionaire's bride for hire. Love or lies, the fake marriage that shocked New York. Inside the contract that shattered a fairy tale. The press swarmed. Claire couldn't leave the penthouse without flashing cameras, people shouting questions, microphones in her face. Clients called one by one, canceling projects. Sponsorships pulled out. Design magazines removed her features. The dreams she'd worked so hard to build began to crumble beneath her feet. Online commenters were cruel. Gold digger, social climber. She tricked him. Claire stopped opening her laptop. She stopped leaving the apartment. And one night, unable to hold it in, she collapsed in the stairwell of the penthouse, curled against the cold wall, knees to her chest. Tears poured down her cheeks like rain. I ruined everything, she whispered, barely able to speak. I ruined your name, your company, everything you built. I'm so sorry, Nathaniel. He found her there, broken and small, nothing like the strong, fiery woman he'd fallen for. He knelt beside her without a word. Maybe I should leave, she said, voice shaking. Maybe it's better if I just... No. His voice cut through the air like steel wrapped in silk. He took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. You didn't ruin anything. You made everything real. You made me real, she sobbed. He wiped her tears with his thumbs, his eyes blazing with something fierce and raw. Before you, I didn't even know what love was. I was cold, empty. You showed me what life feels like. And then he kissed her. It wasn't soft, it was fierce, desperate. A kiss that held every fear, every apology, every I need you that words couldn't say. It was a man clinging to the only truth he had left. And she kissed him back like she was drowning. And he was air. Later that night, curled up in his arms under the weight of the world, Claire whispered, "Do you still wish it was fake?" Nathaniel looked at her like she was sunlight. "Number, I just wish I'd told you I loved you before the world knew." She smiled through tears. The damage was done. The world had seen the contract, but now they would show them the truth. And truth, when fueled by love, was stronger than any lie. The fallout from the scandal was nothing short of catastrophic. What began as whispers in high society circles had turned into a wildfire the media refused to put out. Social feeds burned with opinions, speculations, and venom. News anchors dissected every photo of Claire and Nathaniel, every movement, every gesture, every second of silence between them. Claire had become a symbol, not of love, but of deceit. And Nathaniel? He had become a question mark. Was he a fool in love? Or a manipulator masking corporate greed behind a romantic lie? The Cross-Tech board was furious. Nathaniel sat at the head of a long glass conference table, his expression unreadable, his hands folded tightly as board members yelled, "You've embarrassed this company. You lied to the public. We're facing lawsuits from shareholders. Our stock dropped another 6% this morning." The final blow came from the oldest board member, his father's longtime advisor. "If this continues, we'll be forced to vote. You could lose the company." Nathaniel didn't blink. "I won't lie to protect my image," he said calmly. "I've done enough pretending in my life." "But it was fake, Nathaniel," someone snapped. "Don't you see? You broke trust." "No." His voice was steady now. "What broke trust was building a life without love in it. What broke trust was pretending that appearances were more important than truth. Claire saved me from that." Still, the pressure mounted. And so, the press conference was called. A last resort, a public address. The world would watch, and Nathaniel would decide whether to bend to fear or stand in love. That morning, Claire stood in the dressing room of the penthouse, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her hands trembled as she fastened the simple gold necklace Nathaniel had given her. The one he'd designed himself. A tiny pendant in the shape of a heart, with the initials C+N etched inside so small you had to look closely to see them. She wore a soft white blouse tucked into a navy skirt. Simple, elegant, exposed. When Nathaniel walked in, his eyes softened. He didn't say anything. He just came up behind her, slid his arms around her waist, and held her. "You don't have to come," he whispered against her hair. She turned to face him, voice shaking. "Yes, I do." The press conference was held in the Crosstech Auditorium, the same place Nathaniel had once been celebrated as the next generation of tech innovation. Now it was full of reporters, flashing cameras, and piercing questions waiting to explode. Nathaniel stood at the podium. Claire stood beside him. Her heart raced so loudly she was sure the microphones could pick it up. He looked over the crowd, then into the cameras. His voice, when it came, was calm, strong, honest. "Yes," he said, "the rumors are true." Click, click, click. Cameras fired like gunshots. "Claire and I began this as an arrangement, a contract, a lie even." He paused, let the words breathe. But somewhere along the way, he glanced at Claire. His eyes softened. "She became my everything." The room went still. I fell in love with her honesty, her fire, her heart, with the way she cares about people, the way she walks into a room and makes it warmer, the way she fought to find herself even when the world gave her every reason to quit. He turned back to the crowd. "This may not be the love story my grandfather imagined. It may not have started clean, but it became real, and I won't apologize for it." A murmur ran through the audience, but all Claire heard was the pounding of her own heart. He had said it, not behind closed doors, not whispered in the dark, but here, in front of the world. Claire's throat closed with emotion. Tears welled in her eyes. She took a step forward, gripping the edge of the podium. Her voice was soft, but clear. "I'm not perfect," she said. "And yes, I agreed to something I shouldn't have. But I never expected to fall in love with him." She turned to Nathaniel. "And I did. I fell in love with the man behind the name. The man who reads poetry in the morning and plays jazz at night. The man who saw me when I felt invisible. The man who fought for me, even when it cost him everything." She reached for his hand and squeezed it. "I love you too," she said simply. Click, flash. A storm of emotion caught in one perfect moment. The room erupted in questions, cameras, chaos. But Claire and Nathaniel didn't hear any of it. They only saw each other. And as they walked off the stage, hand in hand, something shifted. The headlines changed. New headlines. "Love in the spotlight. Billionaire speaks from the heart. Claire Bennett breaks silence and breaks hearts. Fake love turns real. Public redemption melts the internet." Online comments, once full of cruelty, began to shift. "Okay, I didn't believe them before, but that press conference, that was real. Find someone who looks at you the way Nathaniel looks at Claire." I cried. I actually cried. But none of it mattered to Nathaniel or Claire. What mattered was this. They had spoken their truth. They had chosen love, messy, honest, beautiful love, over silence. And in that moment, the world began to see what they had always known. Love isn't always perfect, but real love, it doesn't need to be. Nathaniel didn't lose the company. His grandfather, proud and moved, handed him the reins with one condition. Don't ever let her go. 3 months later, Claire walked down a candlelit aisle in a lace gown, her heart full and her smile real. Nathaniel waited at the altar, his eyes locked on hers. When he kissed her this time, it wasn't for show, it was for life. Love isn't always perfect. Sometimes it starts as a lie, crashes through fire and rebuilds itself stronger. But when it's real, it's worth fighting for. Even in a world built on money, expectations, and power, the heart always finds its way home.